fans of sanctioned violence and my uneducated opinions on such things. Welcome to Naughty Boy Fight Picks. This is my UFC Fight Night on Fox 30, I believe, Calgary episode for picks and predictions. Yeah, a few things to get into. I just, yesterday for work, I had a, sorry about that, speaking engagement where, well, of sorts. I went and spoke to student nurses about my experiences with addiction and whatnot. And it reminded me partly why I began doing this, and it was because through work I have to often speak publicly and to groups, and it's not something I'm very skilled in. So doing this was a way for me to develop that, because I don't like speaking to camera, getting more comfortable with it. So it is working and I'm getting better and better, and I guess for people that tune in, then there's benefit to you, because yeah, when I get more comfortable speaking, I can be more entertaining and better to listen to, obviously. So, and yeah, yesterday went really well, so I feel like I am developing in that area, so quite happy about that. This card, I was having heaps of trouble with my picks to begin with. I had one pick and I was like happy with that pick, very happy with it, and then I was struggling to find value on the card. Shout out to the homie Rockstar Z, who came through and suggested some fights for me to look at. And I guess for me, you know, I think everyone wants to feel quite independent when they're making their picks. You know, they want them to be their own picks, and there's still an element of that, but what I learned from that was it can be valuable to kind of lean on other people and investigate their insights. So that's what I've done this week with a couple of the picks, and I was real happy I did that, because in turn, following looking at those fights, I'm really happy with them. So if we have a good week, give me the credit. If we have a bad week, blame Rockstar Z. No. As always, I take full responsibility. I looked into these fights, and I'm confident in the picks. In saying that, I had a bit more time this week than I had the previous couple of weeks. Life's been hectic, but this week we're calming down a bit, so I had more time to do more tape, look at more fights. So what I will do is I will go through the whole card. I don't have analysis for each fight, but I'll make a pick anyhow. And it may, if I haven't looked at the fight or not super familiar with the fighters, I will just give an undereducated pick. So there's the disclaimer: don't fucking trust me unless it's one I state that I've looked into or have a confident read on. So beginning the card, we have Randa Marcos versus Nina Ansaroff. Another thing too, so something I discovered this week, or I've been discovering over the last few months doing this, is that I've watched UFC for ages, and since doing the gambling and whatnot, now when I watch fights, I watch them in a much different way. I'm sure other people are familiar with that. So now when I watch fights, I'm looking for particular things. And so, for instance, looking at Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier, fighters I've watched fight many times, now I go, when I do the tape on them, I'm seeing things that I've never seen before because I'm looking for them. So kind of interesting there. So whilst a lot of fighters I've watched for years and years and watched fight many times, when I revisit them now, I'm kind of discovering that I don't really have a good picture of what the game is and what that fighter does. Well, you know, down to maybe generally I do, but nuance and that sort of thing, not that well versed until I go back and have a proper look. So anyhow, getting back to the card, Randa Marcos versus Nina Ansaroff. no idea. I know Marcos has good good wrestling, grappling, and Ansarov, as from what I can recall, her stand-up has been improving. You would imagine it would too. I'm sure she trains with her partner Amanda Nunes frequently, and I think like, so when I had my one boxing fight, something I found was I felt like and was really sure that the people I was sparring with in my training camp, one of them was like a pro ranked boxer, so and he would beat the shit out of me without really trying, with minimal effort. But what that gave me going into the fight was a supreme confidence of, if I can like get in the ring with these guys, then my opponent ain't gonna have shit for me. And I wonder how much of that is true for Ansarov. It must give her quite a lot of confidence to enter a fight, having trained frequently with Amanda Nunes, who's obviously a fucking beast. In saying that, I don't really know how to pick this fight. I think I would favour Marcos. I think she might be able to win with the grappling and wrestling. Anyhow, next fight, Ortiz versus Nicolau. So I'd been scouring this card trying to find value somewhere. This is one of the fights Z told me to look at, and I'd heard people talking about it, and they were Ortiz is a big dog, heavy underdog, and I'd heard people talking up his chances. So I went and looked at the tape. I've got some notes here, we'll get into those. Where is he? So Nicolau's 25 years old. The fuck was that? But he appears really mature, and what I mean by that is in the octagon he looks very composed and calm and kind of aware. An interesting thing to see and to look for. Yeah, just a guy that's 25 coming in and looking like he's been there forever. Yeah, really impressive for a guy that's just 25 and just had a couple of UFC fights at this stage. He's 13-1 overall. He's on a 6-fight win streak. In his second UFC fight, which was also his first fight at 125, I believe prior to that he had always fought at 135, he faces John Moraga, who is 6th ranked at the time, and he beat him. It was a close-ish fight. I would have given it to Nicolau, but nonetheless, your second fight, yeah, a pretty incredible feat for a guy that age just to come in with a challenge like that and look really good. I think his fight following that, you saw him even more comfortable. I think his confidence would have been buoyed from that win over Moraga. And then he went in against Louis Smoker, who presents problems. I think a lot of people knock him, but he is a dangerous fighter. Difficult, really tall. And then you really saw who Nicolau was in that fight. Because he fucking, beat the brakes off Smoker. And where are we? In his 13 wins, he has 8 finishes, 4 subs and 4 KOs. So obviously a finisher, that's a good finishing rate for that division too. That must be, you must take into consideration that he's just had a short career so far in the UFC. So, you know, typically guys come off regional scenes or whatever and they're fucking finishing heaps of people, and then they might have more decisions at a higher level. But nonetheless, he has finishing instinct and he can get it done multiple ways. So he's a well-rounded guy. He's intelligent, methodical, what I kind of alluded to before. I think you can see him making reads in the fight. He's super comfortable in the pocket, so and he uses good head movement in the pocket, seems to be really aware of where he is, where his opponent is, and wings off these beautiful, powerful and fast counter hooks, which are just sublime, beautiful boxing. in the pocket. He's really hard to hit. His defense is good. Good head movement. Like I said, the beautiful counter hooks. And he's got a good takedown and really good takedown defense also. So great game for him. Ortiz is 4-4 in his last 8 fights. Obviously against really tough competition. His game is largely based around pace and cardio, and he uses a lot of movement, kind of reminiscent of that Dillashaw style. And he has quite awkward striking and good use of angles, so he comes at you from all sorts of angles. And yeah, a really good fighter, but my read here was that Nicolau, he looks like a guy that could be a contender in this division. Like, he could be in that, you know, top 3-4 guys. Whereas Ortiz been around for a long time and he's never quite got there. He's fought the guys up there, but then he loses. So yeah, I really favor Nicolau in this fight. And what have we done here? My one concern was Nicolau getting out cardioed by Ortiz, but I think Ortiz's game might play into Nicolau. So, you know, if he's going to try and pressure and put a pace on Nicolau, I think he's going to eat some shots coming at him because of his beautiful counter striking. So either Ortiz tries to put the pace on him and he gets hurt, or he doesn't put the pace on him and then Nicolau can dictate the pace of the fight, and then it's his fight to win. Yeah, so we're going with 5 units on Dustin Ortiz. And I should add also, I increased my unit size again. So when I started a few months ago, I started at $5 per unit. I think it was, maybe even less. It might have been actually. And anyhow, I've gone up to $8 a unit now. So my goal when I started, I wrote it down, I wanted to get to $10 per unit by the end of the year. And we've nearly achieved that, and a couple more good events, and we will have, so quite excited about that. Next fight, Davis versus Chookagian. Nothing to give you on this fight, so there's no point me even making a pick, so I won't make a pick for that fight. Makdessi versus Pearson, 2 guys near the end of it. Yeah, Pearson you've seen no evolution in his game. Makdessi perhaps slightly more. I would favor Makdessi in this fight. Next fight, this was the first fight I found value in myself, and that was Kulab versus Cutelaba. Find my notes here. Where are we? So, Kulab. He fights out of ATT. He is on a 14-fight win streak and has finished 13 of those wins. It's crazy. You know, that's a guy I'm super comfortable betting on. Obviously, fairly new to the UFC. I think he's had 2 UFC fights, finished them both really early. And there's a point in guys' careers where they reach competition and it's different from what they've had in the past and they take an L, but I don't know, I don't see it happening in this spot. The other thing about that too is, being Russian, it is quite likely he's faced pretty high level competition there. He has killer instinct. The dude is just like tunnel vision as fuck. He goes for what he wants to get and gets it. Really like that. He's about as relentless a fighter as you will possibly see from what I've seen. So think with a slightly different style, Habib, or who do we see last week? The guy that bet Mick, Fabinski. Just guys who have a game and they just go out and implement it. They don't give a fuck about what their opponent does to try and impede their game. They just steamroll towards their goal. If he gets you down or gets you into grappling exchanges, he's constantly improving position. The 2 UFC fights, I noticed he was not particularly fussed about hitting his opponent when they're on the ground, and I mean, like, it was effective in these fights, and I'm sure he has the ability to. And I don't know, I kind of felt like, oh, it would be nice to see you punch your opponent a bit when you have them in these positions, but he just goes for position and goes for sub. I'm sure he does have some ground and pound and whatnot, but and we may see it in this fight. Yeah, he passes, so once again, kind of reminiscent of Khabib, he just is constantly passing and improving position and fighting for position. So it looks super tiring to have this guy on you. He has a big squeeze, obviously, lots of subs on that record, and he can also work off his back too. So Cutelaba, what is he? Not Romanian, but Cutelaba also has he has a combat sambo background, so he may be kind of familiar with Antigoulov's game, but perhaps not the level at which Antigoulov implements it. Cutelaba came to the UFC on a big streak. Since being there, he's gone 2-2 against kind of reasonable competition. He has power. He's very young. I think he's like 22 maybe, and I think his age could work to his detriment in this fight against an experienced, kind of very determined older guy. So with his age, you see him come into the cage and he's very trying to intimidate his opponents. I wonder if he'll do that with Antigulov, because it's obviously not going to work. Yeah, he's really aggressive, but can get quite reckless, which isn't good for him in this spot. He rushes forward with strikes, which would obviously open up the takedown for Antigulov. He has good wrestling, but seems to prefer to stand. And I believe Antigulov can win the wrestling exchanges in this fight. And the stuff I saw of Cutelaba, he will lose position quite often. If he gets an opponent down, they're often back on their feet quite quickly. So he's got good ground and pound, pretty vicious. Yeah, fucking scary looking dude too. He will be the bigger guy and saw him go the distance okay, but he does slow down. So his striking at the beginning looks terrifying, and then in the second and third rounds his striking looks really easy to evade. Yeah, I'd have some concerns about his maturity and temperament. Yeah, his temperament doesn't seem that good. He takes a lot of risks in the fight, throws everything with power. Yeah, he didn't hold top position for very long versus Cannonier, which would have been a good path to victory for him once Cannonier started getting off on him. His striking is pretty one-dimensional, so it's all coming in hooks, and I think it looks pretty easy to read. Yeah, and you saw Cannonier begin to read it, and he could see what was coming, and it was pretty easy for him to begin winning the striking battle. Cutelaba is really tough. He can eat some fucking shots, man. He ate some big shots from Cannonier in that fight. I think Antigolov's going to control the fight with his wrestling, use his experience and Cutelaba's aggression against him. And I think he could outlast Cutelaba if he doesn't get the early sub, but I think he will get a submission early on. And once again, like I think I was saying about Ortiz, like what's his approach going to be, because Cutelaba's usual approach I think will work against him in this fight. So does he have a different approach? and will he try implement one, and would it be effective if it's not his natural game? So yeah, really fancy Antigulov in this spot, and I have 6 units on him, I believe. Yeah, 6 units on Cutelaba, and I'm also, none of my sites have the prop out for Cutelaba by sub, but I think I'll put a unit or 2 on that as well. On to the next fight. What do we got? Cajun Johnson versus Makhachev. Favouring Islam Makhachev here for sure. And I think I have him in some parlays. I'll get to my parlays and props at the end. Or my parlays at least. Hakeem Dawodu versus, is it Arnold Arnett? Favouring Hakeem Dawodu in the spot. Not the most amazing guy, but he is athletic and powerful. I think he can probably put Arnett away. Next fight, Jordan Mean versus, fuck, I forget Morono's first name. So I did look at this fight when I was kind of struggling. Alex Morono, sorry. I had a look at this fight when I was first trying to find some value on the card. I didn't end up betting it, but I did take down some notes. So if people are thinking about this fight, maybe these can be of assistance, maybe not. What's his name? Jordan Mean had 3 losses before his last win. He has a rounded game. Fuck, he's weird. So I was like watching one fight of him, and his striking looked really slow and laboured. And then I watched his next fight, and his striking looked really fluent and fast. So he's very inconsistent, is what I gathered from watching a few fights of Means. He's really experienced, so he's been around a long time, but he's only 28. I think he's had, how many fights? It's crazy. 42 fights at the age of 28. He might be a little bit older. Mean could be a little bit shot worn. I think people remember he retired a few fights ago and then came back, so you got to worry about where he is with his motivation and whatnot. He has good striking defense. He's hard to hit. Saw him fade in a few fights in the later rounds. He looked really good in his last fight, so maybe the motivation is there. I think that kind of concerned me, because he'll be fighting at home for this fight. Looked good in his last fight. Maybe this will be one of his good performances, because I was looking to fade Ming initially, and then I watched that last fight concern me too much, and then I didn't see enough in Morono's game to give me confidence in betting him. As for Morono, he's 3-1 in the UFC, but he had that no contest to Nico Price, and his one official loss was a split decision, so not bad going so far. He's got good footwork, he's fast and mobile. He has a BJJ black belt, but he tends to prefer to strike. He had Price in trouble, like, throughout that fight until Price got him. And he has good cardio and stays very busy. This fight, I thought both guys like had a lot of similarities, a quite rounded game, and just, but nothing stood out about either of them that made me confident in picking them to win this fight. So I just faded it all together. So that's that. If pressed, fuck, what do I want to say? I think Morono's the better fight. I think if anyone, the better fighter. I think if anyone comes into this fight and shows improvement, it'll be him, being the younger, kind of newer to the UFC guy. Maybe more motivation for him there, especially those questions about Mean's motivations. But Mean looked good in his last fight, but I would just ever so slightly favour Morono. So I'll pick him to win. Next fight. Where are we at? Alexander Hernandez versus Olivier Aubin Mercier. So this is another fight Z told me to check out, and I was fucking glad I did. I'd watched, I think Hernandez fought this year, and I remember watching that fight, but I had forgotten who the fuck he was. So, but I quickly remembered upon watching him. So, Start with OAM. He's on a 4-fight win streak. That streak looks good on paper, but going back watching the fights, some of the competition wasn't that great. Some of the decisions were kind of close. Yeah, so not as great as it initially sounds, I think. And off the top of my head, before I went and watched the fights, I was kind of like, oh, OAM's been improving. He's been looking good. He could be a tough fight for Hernandez. But, yeah, so he's a pretty low volume guy, but he's got good accuracy and defense. He's strong, good takedown and wrestling, strong and heavy top game, good passes. Most of his wins have come by submission. And OAM's never been finished. He had the close fight with what's his name, Tony Martin, who's a good fighter. So, you know, nothing wrong with that. And then his last win was over Evan Dunham. So, you know, we're talking about that streak. A Dunham win isn't that amazing. So, he hasn't really faced top flight competition yet. But he has looked good. He's had a good UFC record. He has been improving. And yeah, he's got a mustache. So Hernandez, he's 9-1. He's also never been finished. He's fucking fast and athletic. Uses a lot of movement and switching. His game is very rounded, and his debut versus Dariush was fucking emphatic and incredible. I think in this fight, both guys have momentum coming into this fight, but I feel like Hernandez's momentum is kind of superior. I think he's the better athlete. He's faster, more dynamic, and I think he can make OAM work like he would prefer not to. The one slight concern I do have is OAM putting the grind on him, but Hernandez doesn't look like a guy that's going to accept position if OAM does start grappling him. So I'm quite confident he'll get out of there and get back to his game. So I think Hernandez had a lot of subs on his record as well. So that might be something for OAM to watch for. Anyhow, Hernandez just looks like the better, way more promising fighter to me, and I think he gets the win here. I have gone with 3 units on Hernandez. Still watching that line. If it goes up a bit more, I might place another unit or 2 on Hernandez, but we shall see. Anyhow, on to the rest of the card. Next fight, Jedrzejczyk versus Torres. I've got JJ in some parlays, and I also put a prop bet on her to win by decision. Both of these fighters, majority of their wins, or maybe in recent times at least, have been decisions, and I think most of Tisha's fights have been by decision, so I picked the decision prop. Lots of insights into Joanna recently, given those fights with Rose. The big takeaway for me from that was Joanna is very much tied to her identity and her confidence, and that very much affects how she performs. So I think, and you saw that in the rematch with Rose. So the first 2 rounds were looking like the first fight. The 3rd round, Joanna comes out and starts to fight like herself again. It was like as though she remembered who she was. And for 2 rounds, I think she kind of put it on Rose a bit and won those 2 rounds. Then Rose, an incredible... So the whole fight, I felt like, was a battle of confidence, and it kept seesawing. And then Rose came back and just clinched that final round, and it was quite an incredible performance. I think, you know, you see it with JJ, the way she approaches fights, the way she treats her opponents going into the fight. That's a very important part of her performing, because she needs to believe that she is dominant in all areas, and this opponent will be dominated by her outside and inside the octagon. And I think against Rose, when that wasn't the case, that shook Joanna's confidence and affected her game. And I think that was really evident in the first 2 rounds of the rematch. In this fight, however, I think that may swing back into her favor, and Tecia Torres may be the benefactor of a fucking fired up Joanna, the benefactor of a beating that Joanna wants to give to Rose Namajunas, which may not happen, of course. But yeah, I don't think Tecia has a game or presents problems that Joanna can't deal with. I think she can keep range on Tecia and piece her up from the outside, and that's how I see this fight going. I wouldn't be surprised to see a quite aggressive Joanna like we've seen in the past. And we're making the prop bet for Joanna to win by decision. I was a little concerned. I was like, fuck, if she is really fired up for this fight, which I think she will be, she may get one of those finishes we've seen where she has the opponent on the cage and she's just beating the piss out of them with like 10-shot combos and whatnot. But I think 3-round fight, I think it's pretty safe. Tecia is tough. But yeah, I think her height and reach disadvantage is really going to work against her in this fight. I don't think she will be able to. She may get a takedown on Joanna, but if she does, we've seen it before, Joanna pops right back up, and I think that will be the case. So picking Joanna by decision here, and that'll be interesting then to see what happens next. Once again with this fight, so I think that division too, there's like these tiers, and I think that upper tier is like Joanna, Rose, Andrade, and Gedalia is kind of around there, or was at least. And then down from there, then there's another tier, and I think there's quite a big gap between those tiers, and I think Tecia's in that tier underneath those top fighters of the division. Next fight, Aldo versus Stevens. I haven't made a pick on this fight because I'm too emotional about it. I'm real fucking terrified of seeing Jeremy Stevens knock out Jose Aldo. Aldo is one of my favorite fighters ever. Heartbroken and super impressed when McGregor beat the piss out of him. And then again with Holloway, those two really fucking tough fights for Aldo. I've seen a lot of people who I think are too quick to write Aldo off in this spot. I think if you look at it, who is the better fighter? Jose Aldo is a way better fighter than Jeremy Stevens. It's just a matter of, is he done? And if he is done and Stevens wins, that's not something I really want to see. I don't particularly like Jeremy Stevens. He seems like a bit of a dick. And in my mind, he's not half the fighter Jose Aldo is or was. Maybe we should talk in past tense here. But pressed to make a pick, I'm heartened by the performance Jose had against Frankie. So I think a lot of people were saying after the McGregor loss, Aldo was shot. Oh, I guess a lot of people were not perhaps saying that, but they were wondering that. And yeah, but then since the Frankie fight, obviously the 2 fights versus Holloway where he's taken an extreme amount of damage and quite demoralizing losses. So is he done? And I think that's the only way he loses to Stevens, if he is a shot fighter. So I'm keeping some faith here in Jose that he is not done and that he beats Stevens, and that would make me super happy. Yeah, it's going to be a depressing recap next week if Jose Aldo gets knocked out by Jeremy Stevens. Then on to the main fight. Yeah, so I'm picking Aldo with my emotion. Next fight, been quite tempted to bet this one. Eddie Alvarez versus Dustin Poirier. Two of the most violent lightweights you've ever seen, both coming off wins against one of the other most violent lightweights, Justin Gaethje. Both have real incredible performances against Gaethje. I think Alvarez's might have been slightly more impressive, but we're talking about style matchups here, and that doesn't mean that he beats DP in this fight. I think, yeah, popular opinion is Poirier. We've seen him developing his game, being more calculated, striking from the outside. He has a nice straight left that is powerful, that he can keep guys on the end of, which apparently is Alvarez's kryptonite. We've seen him eat that shot from McGregor and then Poirier in the first fight. And that's a real concern if you're Eddie Alvarez. Yeah, Alvarez has his game, and it is kind of he needs to brawl, and then once brawling and fighting in close, he's really tricky. So I think he throws things that surprise his opponents, and it's actually like, so going back and watching that, I was like, fuck, he's really crafty kind of in close boxer. Apart from that, I'm interested to see if Alvarez does try and modify his game, because he's got to know what Poirier is going to try and do in this fight, and I think you might see it even more. Poirier might be more dedicated to that game plan of fighting the fight at his distance. I think his distance is slightly longer than Alvarez's, or like at least where he's dangerous. He has much more space to play with. Alvarez has a very short space to play with, which is his danger zone. So the things that stop me from betting Poirier, and I have included him in a parlay, so I guess I have bet him. So I do think he's going to win. I think he's going to implement that game plan, fight the smarter fight, and not get into a firefight with Alvarez. I think we see... So he had hurt Alvarez a bunch of times in that first fight, and then it got a bit hairy when Alvarez was really hurt and Poirier was trying to finish him. So I think this time I wouldn't be surprised to see, if Poirier hurts Alvarez, that he stays on the outside and continues to try and pick him apart rather than going for the kill, because that's where Alvarez is dangerous. And should he do that, he should win this fight. But yeah, nonetheless, super excited for this matchup. My heart wants Alvarez to win, but I think he's going to lose. And then, so in regards to that result too, so they're saying Khabib is going to be at this event. So I wonder, and people are speculating, are they going to announce the winner of this fight to face Khabib? I guess there's lots of, fuck, the top of this division is a mess. I personally, I know Kevin Lee lost to Ferguson, and then there's a weight cutting issues, but I think Lee is the most, if you don't have McGregor and you don't have Ferguson, I think Kevin Lee's the most interesting matchup for Khabib. But yeah, these guys both feel like they're in line, so Poirier versus Khabib, it doesn't excite me. I mean, like, that's a great fight, it's exciting, but it's not the fight I want to see for the title. A, I'd like to see Conor. B, I'd like to see Ferguson, and if it was neither of those two, I'd like to see Kevin Lee. That may be a controversial opinion, but whatever. So yeah, that's largely my picks. I'll go into the parlays. I've got a parlay on Poirier and Joanna. I got a couple units on that. Parlay on Hakeem Dawodu and Nicolau. Couple units on that, and then I got a parlay on Joanna, Makachev, and Andy Kulab. Couple units on that, and then I got the Joanna wins by decision prop. and I'll be looking at the anti-Gulov wins by submission prop when it comes out on my betting sites. And then to go back over the straight picks, we got Hernandez, Nicolau, and anti-Gulov. So I'm feeling really confident this week. I think we're going to win some money, but as you know, fucking anything can happen in the sport. But nonetheless, I'm feeling good. And if I do go up this week, it will be, so I've had a couple of 3-event win streaks, but I haven't gone past that. So fucking here's hoping that this is my first 4-event win streak. And I feel like it's going to be. I feel like we're going to be in the green, not the red. And in saying that, oh fuck, did I say it in my last video? I think I did, yeah. But on the Bet MMA tips site, once you go over 50 units profit, you get this dark green circle next to your name. And I got that. Shout out to, what's his name? Goat off that site, who is fucking appears to be an incredible tipper. I went and looked at his record, crazy. But he welcomed me to the dark green club, which was really nice of him. I might just quickly look at comments from the last video before we get into some other stuff. Excuse me. Sorry, I just thought to do this now, so I should be, you know. If you've watched a few of my videos now, you know I'm terribly unorganized and never have everything lined up as I should. Where are we at? I had quite a few people asking me for whether I had tips for Parker versus White. I feel bad saying it, but I'm not terribly invested in the career of Joseph Parker. I do like boxing, but particularly now with all the time I'm dedicating to MMA and specifically UFC, so I'm not even really looking. That's all the time I have, so I haven't looked at that. I don't know what the fuck White does. I watch every Parker fight. Obviously he's countryman and we're proud of him. Yeah, so I've got nothing for that, I'm afraid. And if you're looking to me, there's way better people you could go to for tipping advice for boxing events. What else have we got here? Blue Collar Ninja says, thanks for another great video. My pleasure. Thank you for watching. I appreciate that heaps. Oh, while I'm at it too, subscribe, like, comment, all that shit if you're so inclined. And he says, I'm coming to realize all my worst picks lately have been entirely nostalgia related. Yeah. And I think probably everyone's made that mistake at some point. I certainly have. You Got Soul says, I'm not a fan of parlays, but you definitely have a good eye for a parlay. Well done. Rakic was in beast mode. Great to get him at dog odds as well. I knew Ledette would get shown up as soon as he fought a non-bum. And yeah, same. So happy with that pick. Saw so many people picking Ledette, and it's like, he's barely shown anything at heavyweight, and he's coming down to a division where your game has to be more complex, and he hadn't shown that his game was complex whatsoever. And in regards to the parlays, yeah, I've had my ups and downs with them, but I think I've had a good run lately. Yeah, been doing pretty well with the parlays. I'll check my overall record on them. So out of parlays, I've got 13 right and 16 wrong. Average odds on them have been 2.82. That's decimal odds. I've bet 55 units on parlays. My average bet is 1.9 units, and I've had 17.3 units profit at a return on investment at 32%. So yeah, done good with the parlays, and I'm expecting a few to come in this week too, so we should improve that record. I'd love to get the right wrong up over 50%. That would be nice. My props and my straight picks are both up over 50, straight picks over 60. Yeah, so I enjoy the parlays. I find them useful, you know, for particularly for fighters that you're super sure about that aren't paying out much money. Then parlaying a few of those together and turning them into a decent payout for yourself. I've just lost the comments here. yeah, that's about it. So coming up, Adelaide card in beginning of December. Super exciting for me. I'm gonna go. I've been to two UFC events both times I've come to Auckland. Haven't been to one in Australia, which I imagine will be bigger and better than the ones I've seen in New Zealand. So we're going there in December. They just announced for that card Tai Tuivasa versus JDS. Crazy. Love Tai and have always loved JDS. So excited for the opportunity to see both those guys fight live. I don't think they announced it as a main event either. So here's my suspicion. I have no inside knowledge. This is pure speculation. But don't be surprised if the main event for UFC Adelaide is Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva. And fuck, if that is the case, like, I know you have to heavily favor Israel in that fight, but still, the opportunity to see Anderson Silva fight live, fucking exciting. Although I will be going for Israel, obviously, to see him beat a legend and kind of the passing of the torch in that moment will be fucking cool. So I'm hoping that's what happens. This is my dream for UFC Adelaide that I'll be attending. I hope it's Israel versus Anderson in the main event. I guess fuck, Tai and JDS would have to be the co-main in that case. But I was hoping to see Dan Hooker in a co-main. Fuck, actually, he fucking deserves that. So Hooker, perhaps, it looks like Pettis is dodging him, calling out Nate Diaz and shit. So I don't know if they're going to get that fight done, but that's the one I wanted to see. But fuck it, whoever, top 5 guy versus Hooker would be lovely on that card. And then I want to see Kai Kara France make his debut. And short of that, don't have any other demands. Be nice to see Shane Young have another run with his teammates. Fuck, imagine if all the city kickboxing guys are on the same card. That would be sick. Wouldn't be surprised to see Volkanovski. Fuck, that would be too stacked. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself now. But yeah, you know, it could be fun, that card. I'm excited to see how it pans out, and I hope I don't get severely disappointed. The Contender Series yesterday, watched that in lieu of knowing what had already happened. The Nicolau fight, I'm trying to choose my words carefully here because I don't want to patronize that guy at all, but fuck, it was like, there's parts to it, so, and I hadn't seen him fight before, and so it was kind of like shocking and scary watching him fight. I found like I had a reaction to it that was like a gut reaction. I was like, oh fuck, and I guess I felt kind of bad for that because that is fucking patronizing. Like, that dude's what, 14-1 or something, and he's fought guys like Gaethje, obviously lost, but he's beaten everyone else, so he doesn't need me to feel fucking bad for him. But yeah, to see him lose that fight yesterday was real fucking tough. A guy that had proven himself on the regional scene is fighting with this severe handicap, or you would imagine anyhow. It looks fucking difficult, but he does really well somehow, which is super inspiring and impressive, man. Like, there's no way you just can't have the utmost respect for that dude. It's like, you know, he's born with the hand missing and whatnot, and then you know, you see lots of stories of people with physical impairments or handicaps or whatever pursuing physical things in sports and doing well, but there's something to be said about like pursuing the hardest sport you possibly could pursue with that impairment, and that's fucking crazy. Like, so just so much respect for him, and I guess that's what made it really sad that he didn't get that win. He's proven he can fight at a high level, and then he was asked once again to prove himself through this Contender Series, and I felt like maybe they should have just given him a shot in the UFC, because not because of the impairment, but because of his record. there's guys with worse records who have got UFC contracts, but nonetheless, you know, he got the opportunity and he didn't win, so that was a pretty tough watch. I found that made me pretty emotional, actually, and I felt fucking sad for Nicolau, but he probably don't need my sympathy. He's probably fucking fine. So yeah, interesting though. The real impressive fight from that card was Davis versus Yusuf. That first round was a fucking banger, and both those guys were like so scary. Incredible, crisp, powerful boxing and counter punching. Like, never mind Contender Series, but that was some of the most exciting fighting in that first round I've seen in I don't know how long. Fuck, I hope both those guys, so like Davis obviously began to succumb to the shots Yusuf was landing. The pace slowed down a little bit, which was kind of weird. I was like, oh man, this is going to be the best fight I've ever seen. Pace slowed down a little bit. Yusuf did what he had to do. Real impressive performance. I believe he got the contract right. I didn't watch the like handing out of the contracts part. But yeah, I hope to see both those guys in the UFC. Anyhow, appears they've announced Till versus Woodley. Strange shit. Doesn't make any sense. Colby's getting stripped. Bit of a bummer. I was excited to see the Colby versus Woodley fight, but as so often happens in MMA, things don't work out the way you want them to. I will still be excited about a Till versus Woodley fight. Hopefully Till makes the weight. Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens there. Guess that's about it for today. We're running at like 52 minutes almost, and that may be my longest video. Like I said before, please do subscribe to the channel, like it, and yeah, hit me up if you're tailing my bets. I know a few people do, and don't hit me up if you're tailing my bets and we lose this week, only if we win. But nah, whatever, hit me up. Get in the comments, have a discussion. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, links in the bio. Got an email if you want to ask questions. If there's something you'd particularly like me to get into, I may have the time to do it, so be interested in doing that, like whether it be upcoming fights, people's careers, whatever, just hit me up. So thanks very much for watching again. I will be back with the recap from Calgary, hopefully talking about Jose Aldo decimating Jeremy Stephens and talking about all the money we won. So thanks very much.